What is debt service?
Debt service is all about retiring and paying the interest on bonds.
Debt service is when the state pays back bonds that the state has issued in order to fund infrastructure projects throughout the state, such as building roadways, university buildings, or K-12 school facilities. Usually the bonds are paid back over about 20 to 30 years with specific interest rates, and the state must pay these costs annually out of the state budget. The way that the state's debt service obligations affect the state budget is that essentially the more the state spends on debt service, the less it has to spend on other state programs such as K-12 schools and education, corrections, universities, or any other programs that the state legislature may wish to fund. So it does have the effect of reducing the funds available for other programs. And because debt service has to be paid back, usually over a 30-year period, it locks in that level of payment for 30 years. So it's not as if the state or legislature can decide 10 years from now to change their debt service level. That's set in once the bonds are sold, so that it provides the state with less flexibility to reduce spending than, say, other programs where they can change the budget from year to year.
Has the debt service level changed over time?
It's gone way up, and that's because we had a big expenditure program for the highways, for public transportation, for the environment, and for education, and for some other things. So we issued a lot of bonds, and as a result now, the debt service has gone from a very small part of the budget to a very substantial part of the budget. It's getting up above the 6% range.
In the last decade, the state's debt service has risen from around $2 billion to over $5 billion. At the beginning of the 2000s, debt service made up about 3% of the state's general fund budget, whereas in 2012-13, it's estimated it will make up about 6% of the state's general fund budget.
How does California's debt service level compare?
We're on the high end. 10, 15 years ago, we were on the low end. We hadn't issued as many. But now with our major construction projects and building projects, we have raised our debt service level up to one of the higher in all the country, but we're certainly not the highest.
I think one particular thing to know about the state's debt service is that it has increased substantially over the last decade, and it's projected to continue to increase. Over the last decade, the state's voters have approved almost $100 billion in new bonds, and as those bonds are sold over the next 5 to 10 years, we would expect the state's debt service to grow even more from its current level of about $5 billion up to $7 or even $8 billion per year out of the state budget.
Debt service is 5% of the total budget.